Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So earlier this year, the Rescue South Africa Civil Rights Alliance had been formed, or RSACRA. And since then, this RSACRA had built up a team of many legal professionals. It's mostly consisting of legal professionals that give their own time pro bono with one explicit goal of the civil rights organization, which is to get the ANC convicted of crimes against humanity. Now, they have built up a team of some serious heavyweights in our legal industry. For example, on their team, there are people like Professor Andries Raad, who was the person who also wrote the memorandum that we gave um, at the US Embassy earlier this year in February, and also many other senior counsel. Now, the RSACRA was formed by Millie Wesley, and I think many of you will remember this name because she was the lawyer that took Julius Malema to court and had him convicted of hate speech, which many people thought was not a possibility because we know AfriForum had done it multiple times over the last 10 years. And every single time they tried this, they lost their case in court against Malema. And she was the first to actually get this conviction of hate speech against Julius Malema. Then she started this group. This was her brainchild. And she started contacting many of the legal heavyweights in this country and asked them if they wanted to join her in order to take the ANC all the way up to the ICJ in order to get them convicted of crimes against humanity. And today with me, I've got Mr. Errol Naidoo, who is the spokesman for the RSACRA. And he's going to tell us about what they plan on doing, what the time frame is going to be, and how they plan on achieving this. Thanks for joining us, Errol.
You're welcome, Willem. Good to be with you.
Tell us a little bit more about the RSACRA. Who are you guys? How does your legal team look? Who is involved? And what is your? I already said what your explicit stated goal is, but can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think your introduction was kind of a good summary of what Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance is all about. Firstly, it's an alliance. It's an alliance of like-minded people. They don't necessarily have to be legal professionals, although most of the team on the organization are legal professionals, and we're very grateful for that. But there's activists, there's farmers, there's just ordinary citizens that all believe that South Africa is being destroyed, systematically being dismantled by an organized criminal network called the ANC and other corrupt politicians that is in it for themselves, for looting the treasury of taxpayers' money, fraud, racketeering, money laundering, all of it. It's reported in the media almost daily, so everybody's aware of it. And we believe that civil society needs to do something about this. And so we created this alliance, and anybody can join the alliance if they believe in our vision, and that is to hold the ANC and other corrupt politicians accountable for crimes against humanity, crimes against the South African people. And we see
So, Errol,
that
can you explain to us how exactly is the ANC, in your opinion, guilty of crimes against humanity, and exactly what have they done which gives you the necessary firepower to actually get a conviction against them?
well, so we firmly believe that the ANC is guilty of crimes against humanity. I'll give you some examples, and that's the four pillars that the Rescue South Africa Civil Rights Alliance is based on. If you go to our website, rsacra.co.za, you would see there that one of the pillars is children's rights, and we believe that the policies of the ANC, the corruption, the cadre deployment policies that have destroyed this country and destroyed state-owned enterprises has directly contributed to the misery and the downfall of children in our nation. So, for example, University of Cape Town's Children's Institute, they've done research and they have discovered that there is 8 million children, mostly poor Black children, that is suffering from malnutrition to the extent that their growth is stunted. There's also been reports over the past few months or even 12 months that children are actually dying in South Africa as a result of hunger, dying of hunger in a country where there is sufficient food and sufficient production of food. And what is happening here is these children live in poor or come from poor households that cannot give them nutritious food to keep up their health. And so the government has instituted, through the Department of Education, food nutrition feeding schemes. And the children are poor children coming from out of these backgrounds and out of these homes are supposed to get their nutrition through these feeding schemes. But what has happened? The media reports consistently that these feeding schemes is riddled with corruption by ANC cadres. Even that feeding of children, giving them nutrition so they can live, riddled with corruption. And it's by ANC cadres and their family members, to the extent that these children are not getting the nutrition they need and deserve. And so children are dying of hunger. In a country where the president's private plane, his plane that he flies around the world with, the bill for food on one trip per person is 24,000 Rand, including expensive liquor and everything, while children are dying of hunger in this country. And 8 million children are suffering from malnutrition. That to me is a crime against humanity. Children being denied homes, children being denied decent education, even school facilities, children dying in pit latrine toilets. When the government promised 20 years ago that they were going to fix all those things, nothing has been fixed. To this day, children are sitting in fields under trees getting instruction in education because they don't have proper buildings. And our government is allocating billions to education, but so much of it is being stolen and misappropriated by ANC cadres. So corruption, incompetence, mismanagement of state resources is a direct consequence of children suffering, dying, and not getting the education they need to become proper members of society. Research has also shown that, international research has shown that the children in grade 6 in South Africa, even though they're in grade 6, they cannot read for meaning. South Africa, in fact, is at the bottom of the world list internationally because of the breakdown of education standards. Now, this is denying children their rights, denying them their constitutional rights, and there's plenty of rights written into the Constitution that the government is required and obligated to uphold. But our government is failing at that, and they're failing because of cadre deployment, mismanagement, incompetence, corruption, theft, fraud, you name it. Children are dying as a result of that.
So it's interesting to me what you just described there, because it seems to me like you describe extreme levels of corruption as well as extreme levels of incompetence. But if we take the ANC to the ICJ to get them convicted of crimes against humanity, or at least a crime against humanity, we must look at the underlying acts that can constitute crimes against humanity according to the Rome Statute in international law. And I've got a list here, and I'm going to read it to you, Errol. And it includes murder or mass murder, the unlawful killing of civilians by the state, extermination or genocide, which is the large-scale killing, or deliberate inflicting of life-threatening conditions. Enslavement, of course, we know what that is. Forcible transfer of population, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rights, torture, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, persecution against any identifiable group, or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, or other universally recognized impermissible grounds. And then lastly, the enforcement of disappearance of persons. So, and then under the definition of a crime against humanity by a state, a crime against humanity, according to the Rome Statute, means any of the acts listed in the statute, which is the list that I just read to you, when they are number one, committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack, and number two, directed against any civilian population, and number three, with knowledge of the attack. And so, with knowledge of the attack, that is, of course, the mens rea element of crime, where they must deliberately be doing this because they want to do it, and this is what they want to achieve. So, can you tell us, according to your group and the research that you had done, of those crimes that I had listed there, that we talked about here, which of those would you say the ANC is guilty of? And do you think that you are able to prove the mens rea aspect with regards to any of those crimes?
Yeah, so this is a long process, Willem. It's going to start in the local courts, in the high courts of South Africa, and it's going to work its way through the court system until it's exhausted, and would then eventually end up in international courts of law. And we believe that the ANC is hiding a lot of what they're doing. Their Marxist policies disguised as, promising people a better life for all, making promises to the electorate, and then failing dismally on those promises. And the consequences, direct consequences, is the suffering of the people. And you look at how many people are unemployed in South Africa as a direct result of the ANC's economic policies, that even though they're promising people we're going to create jobs, build jobs, they're doing the exact opposite. And everything they're doing is in the interest of the ANC and not of the people of South Africa. So there's a direct correlation between what the ANC is doing, and they're doing it deliberately. They know what they're doing. They're destroying our economy, and they're doing it with their eyes open, and they're doing it for their own self-interest, because there are ANC officials that have become multimillionaires and billionaires of what they're doing, their BEE policies, so-called BEE policies that is supposed to be uplifting Black people, previously disadvantaged people, right? It's not doing that.
Yes.
It's uplifting and making billionaires of a small, tiny group of politically connected people. And half the country, that, our population is about 62 million, so about 30 million people is dependent on welfare. That's 385 Rand a month, and they have to eke out an existence on that 385 Rand a month. So how is broad-based Black economic, how has it impacted the people of South Africa when half the nation is dependent on welfare? It is a lie, and it's a lie from hell.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but I think many governments all over the world have had policies that destroy their own economies and that made life worse for the citizens living in those countries. But are all of these countries then guilty of crimes against humanity? Or do you think there's a specific, underlying act as stated within the Rome Statute that would constitute a crime against humanity? Just to give you an example here, number 8 on the specific underlying acts within the Rome Statute says persecution against any identifiable group or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, or otherwise universally recognized impermissible grounds. I think if I were to make this case, this would probably be the underlying act that I would focus on. Of course, there's also the act of extermination of the population or genocide. And as we know, Donald Trump has already accused South Africa of committing a genocide specifically against Afrikaners. But I think that one will probably be a lot more difficult to prove. And I think that's also why groups like Solidarity and AfriForum are very how shall I put it? They are very afraid of going there to the genocide route. But I think there is quite a safe route under Section 8 here of the underlying acts of the persecution against identifiable groups. Do you think that the ANC is guilty of persecution against an identifiable group within South Africa? And if so, how would you prove that in court, and how would you make the case against the ANC for a crime against humanity?
Yeah, look, I believe that the ANC is discriminating and persecuting minority groups in South Africa. It's clear if you look at even the video that was shown in the Oval Office where Ramaphosa went to visit Donald Trump. He showed Julius Malema singing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer" to a stadium filled with 100,000 people. Now we know since 1994, over 3,000 farmers were killed. So that is a clear incitement to violence against a particular group. So whether that constitutes genocide or not, it's still the majority government representing the black majority is calling for people to kill a certain group of people, which basically is the definition of genocide. And over 3,000 farmers have been killed. It's documented and tortured in most horrific ways. And our government refuses to declare farm murders a priority crime. Why? Because it's not politically correct. So they're complicit in the murder of farmers. And of course, the murder of farmers means that food security for 62 million South Africans is being diminished every time a farmer is killed or a farmer leaves this country, and many have. As far back as the 80s, we had about 90,000 farmers, and now we're down to 30,000 farmers. So we're losing farmers, and now with Donald Trump's offer to people to immigrate to the United States of America, especially from the farming community, it means we're going to lose more farmers. And so what the ANC is doing and their policies, targeting a particular group of people, and that song, "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," is still being sung, and our courts have upheld that as a cultural thing, not genocide, not calling for the death of a certain group of people, which it is doing. And so people around the world, when I travel internationally, they can't believe this. They can't believe that this is allowed to happen, because anywhere in the world, if there was the majority in that country calling or singing a song that says, "Kill the certain people, kill this people, kill the Boer, kill the farmer," it's clear as daylight what the intention. It's an incitement to violence, to harm, and to murder. And yet the courts said that's okay. So that is, I believe, a crime, and it hasn't been tested in international courts. Right? So it's the courts in South Africa has ruled in this way. And there's documented proof of murder and torture of farmers, and it's still happening to this day. And our government says it's not happening. They're kind of dismissing it. It's not really a big deal. Many people are dying. It's that kind of thing. They're killing all kinds of people. Our murder rate, it's about 75 murders per day in South Africa. And they say, look, it's black people, Indian people, colored people. So you can't say that kill the Boer, kill the farmer, or that farmers are being targeted. But there's no song to say kill the Indians and kill the coloreds and kill the this. There is a song calling for the murder of farmers, and farmers are dying as a
specifically the
result of
Boer,
it.
which is, if you look at the original language, when it was Dubula Ibunu in Zulu, Ibunu specifically does not just mention or doesn't refer to farmers in any way, actually. Ibunu, the Zulu word, refers to white people, and specifically Afrikaners, Afrikaans-speaking white people. Just before we get to the mens rea concept on the law and how we're going to deal with that, I want to ask you, Errol, within this concept of persecution against an identifiable group, would you include Black economic empowerment and, all of the different racial laws in this country in that part of persecution? Would you say that it qualifies as persecution against mostly white people as a group, but also um, other minorities
Yeah.
who also get less points within BE? As we know, black people obviously get the most points and get all the ones that need to be pushed into ownership and directorship of companies the most, and so on and so forth. Would you argue that these race laws, such as BE, also constitutes persecution under their own statute? And how would you prove that?
Yeah, look, I think it does because, in 1994, when the ANC became the government, Nelson Mandela made a speech that one nation, one group, of never again will one group dominate over another group in South Africa. And that we are now the new democracy, the new democratic South Africa was touted as a non-racial, non-sexist democratic South Africa. Non-racial. We're not non-racial 31 years later, because there's still 143 race-based laws on our statute books. People are still being classified as black, white, colored, and Indian, even though it's not in our constitution. There's nothing that recognizes a race classification, but we have it in our laws. Now, how is that possible? Because we are a non-racist, non-sexist country, and yet we're classifying people by color. So, for example, my son, when he applied to UCT to study law, he had to go at the back of the queue because first black students got preference, and then if there was any spots left, perhaps he would get in. He didn't get in. So even though we were discriminated against during the apartheid years. I'm Indian, but Indians colors are at back of the queue, so there's still persecution and still discrimination. So what it is essentially is reverse apartheid. South Africa is in reverse apartheid at the moment. Nobody wants to say it. The media won't say it because they lie, they bought, and they paid for media. They corrupt as the ANC is corrupt, but it's reverse apartheid. The ANC has just reversed everything, and they're using BEE as the cover all that we're uplifting our people through this BEE laws. Well, if that was true, then they would have an argument. But if you look at the evidence of BE, it is not uplifting anybody but the few people, the ANC cadres. Everybody knows that, even black academics, black political analysts are all saying the same thing. BE has failed because the intention is not to uplift the people. It's there to enrich a few people in the political class. And it's doing that, and everybody else is poor. That's why we have high unemployment. Poverty has deepened. Our state institutions have all been running to the ground by the ANC. South African Airways, Denel, you name it, all of them has been destroyed. They were all once world-class institutions, and today they're all destroyed completely. Why? Cadre deployment. And the ANC is still doing the cadre deployment thing up till today, even with all the destruction and loss that we have in this country. They continue with it, even though it's irrational and they can see it's not working. Why are they repeating and consistently holding on to policies that have proven to fail? Why? So that has to be tested in court, because they're promising the people of South Africa one thing and doing something completely different. And they're governing in the best interest of the ANC and its cadres. If you think about the Zondo Commission report, they had that 1 billion rand was spent on the Zondo Commission, 3.5 years, 3 volumes of reports given to the president. President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018, when he became the president, he promised a new dawn. What did he give us? He gave us state capture 2.0. We're still in state capture. Zuma started it Ramaphosa took the baton from him and is continuing. It's even worse. Corruption, theft, fraud, racketeering, money laundering is 10 times worse under Ramaphosa. That's the new dawn. They're stealing everything and they're destroying everything, right? 62 million people are suffering as a result of this. And they call that governance. This is a crime against humanity, Willem, and it has to be tested in the courts.
So tell me, Errol, the strategy that you will follow, as I understood it from some of the previous interviews that you had done, you are not going to have one big case accusing the ANC of crimes against humanity. You're going to have multiple different cases focusing on different elements. And then these cases will, as I understand it, start at the lowest courts in South Africa and then move up to the higher courts. And then eventually, if you don't find success within the South African legal system, you will escalate this to the ICJ or the ICC, the international courts. Tell me, do you think that there's any chance of finding success within the South African courts, whether that be the lower courts or the higher courts? Or do you think that ultimately this case will be fought in the international courts? The reason why I'm saying this is because I spoke about this on another stream as well. If you look at the courts in South Africa, the lower the courts are, the less one can say captured are they by cadres. We talked about cadre deployment in depth, and what they did was they focused the judicial system to ensure that at the highest courts, at the Constitutional Court, at the Supreme Court of Appeals, the ANC's actual committee on cadre deployment handpicked every single one of these judges and justices to be, the presiding officers within those courts. Now, you want to argue this case in front of these individuals. Do you see any success within the South African courts? And if you don't, then why can't you just go straight to the international courts, such as the ICC and the ICJ?
Well, in cases like this, you have to start in your local court system. You've got to start with the High Court, the Appeals Court, the Constitutional Court. And if you don't get justice there, you can then move on to the ICC or the ICJ. So that is kind of the process. You have to exhaust your national court system, judicial system before you go international. I think that there are some good judges in South Africa. There have been some good rulings against the ANC, against Jacob Zuma. And so we can't say that all of them are captured and you know, kind of use that, look, it's useless going to the courts and trying these things. We won't know unless we try these cases.
I think the better judges that we have are probably the older ones before cadre deployment became so imminent within this country. So what that actually means to me is the longer that the situation goes on, the more capture the courts will become and the less we'll have fair judges within our courts. Eventually, if the ANC is successful with a plan of cadre deployments, the entire judiciary will be captured or should be captured according to what they said themselves that they wanted to achieve. I think it was in the 1999 50th Congress in Mafeking.
Yeah, look, that's exactly what happened in Zimbabwe. And look what happened to Zimbabwe. And that's the reason, Willem, we have to fight. We have to stand up. We have to fight for the people of South Africa, for the future of this nation. That's why the organization is called Rescue South Africa. It is essentially what we're doing is rescuing this nation and every South African citizen. Then most people are not aware just how bad it is in this country and which direction we're heading. So it is up to civil society to stand up and to do something. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, have gathered, and we thank God for the legal professionals, some of the top people, senior counsels and advocates and law professors that have come together for this reason to say we've got to stand up for the people. Most of the people don't have a voice in this nation. We have to give them a voice by speaking for the poor, the disenfranchised. We've got to speak up for the unemployed, for the children that are dying suffering from malnutrition, people that are not getting water. What about the water crisis? We have a water crisis because the ANC destroyed our water infrastructure through incompetence and cadre deployment and theft and racketeering and corruption. And the people that's responsible for destroying all this infrastructure, they're still in all top positions all over the show. I mean, in Gauteng, they got a massive problem. City Power, they're sitting with a debt of 16.3 billion, which the mayor tried to hide from the people. Why? Because they appointed people that can't do the jobs, they don't know what they're doing, and they just destroyed everything, infrastructure that people need for their living, for their lives. They've destroyed that, and they've run up this debt, same like Eskom with over 400 billion in debt. The ANC did this. You remember during state capture, the Gupta family, crime family, Zuma brought them in here. They stole billions, hundreds of billions. And the ANC helped them escape to Dubai. They're never, ever coming back. They got all the billions and they're sitting pretty there because of the ANC. The ANC did that. If you think about that Estina dairy farm thing that Ace Magashula was involved with, 700 million was siphoned off to the Gupta family, who are billionaires, for their wedding, while that money was supposed to go to black farmers in the Free State to help them. And so black people that were supposed to get a certain amount of money and build farms, dairy farms, it was taken away from them and given to the Gupta family by an ANC government. And they say they're working for the people. They're uplifting their people, BEE. There is no BEE. It's an self-enrichment of ANC cadres to the misery and detriment of 62 million people. This is not about black and white. We must get away from this black, white, colored Indian thing. We're all South Africans. The ANC is destroying the country. And all of us, never mind what color you are, going to go down with the ship, are going to die in this country. People are dying already. Families are being destroyed. Crime is out of control. South Africa is a mafia state today. There is so much evidence about that mafias is running construction, mafia is running water, mafias are running energy, mafias are running, they're all over. They're controlling every aspect of South Africa's economy. And how did this happen? It happened under the ANC. And Ramaphosa is presiding over all of this. And he stands up on the world stage at the G20. We're fighting corruption and sustainability and equality. And he's using all the right words to impress the international community. Meanwhile, he's running the country into the ground. Billions is being lost and stolen every single day. And he wants to burnish his international credentials as a globalist leader, making speeches, and the media's writing about what a great leader he is because he's standing up apparently to Donald Trump. And so the lies and the deception is going out there. And we, the people, ordinary people that can do something, must do something. And
yes,
so
it's very interesting, especially with these corruption cases, because corruption is so entrenched within South Africa that everybody is basically protecting everybody else because of the fact that they know they are dirty themselves. And the moment that there's a whistleblower that wants to come out and give proof to the courts or to any commissions, these people just get murdered. I did an entire stream about this, where we went through about 20 different whistleblowers of all walks of life, some of them, billionaires, some of them lower level employees, and all of them have said, no, money was stolen here, corruption took place here, and then they were just offed, like you would see would happen within all of these, I would almost call it Godfather movies. But what is interesting to me is, so we talked about the fact that you guys are planning on breaking up crimes against humanity into smaller sections and then pushing all these smaller sections simultaneously through the lower courts all the way up to the higher courts, and then if it doesn't succeed, to the international courts. And I want to talk about the international courts after this, but I've just got one question before this, and this is the fact that we've seen multiple other organizations actually taking the ANC or the government or the municipality or whatever on within the lower courts. And then the reverse of what I described before is true, where this organization actually wins the case against the government or the municipality, and then the government would just appeal to a higher court, and then in the higher court, they would lose the case. For example, in the very early 2000s, there was a case in Pretoria where in the east of Pretoria, the homeowners took the municipality to court for not giving service delivery and then withholding their municipal rates because of this. And they actually won in every single court, and the government or the municipality just kept on escalating and appealing to a higher court. And then eventually, when they got to the constitutional court, they lost the case, and they had to pay back or they had to pay the money that they had withheld because of the lack of service delivery. But you guys said that you will take it further than this. Explain to me that jump from the constitutional court to international law. How does that work, and how do you actually appeal to an international court?
Yeah, so Willem, I'm not a lawyer myself, but from what in meetings I've had with the group, with the lawyers, it's a process that you have to go through. Every country has to do this. And so civil society groups like ours can take government to court based on the constitution, because we
Yes.
have a constitution that is the supreme law of the land. And if government is obligated by that constitution to fulfill certain duties, and if they're not doing that, they're violating their constitutional obligations, they're in breach of their duties, right? And so the people can take them to court. And if you go, you have to start at, like we have these different, the water crisis case, then there's going to be the children's rights case, then it's going to be the economy, the BEE, race-based laws. All these different cases are going to go next year. By March, some of these cases are going to begin to be filed in courts and going to start the process of going through the court system. So it will be the High Court, and then if it has to be appealed, it's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court of Appeals, and then it will ultimately end up at the highest court of the land, the Constitutional Court. But if we are not satisfied that we have got justice and we have the evidence to prove that, we can then appeal to an international court, and we have to also show that we did go through the judicial system, the court system in the country before we've exhausted the local court system before we appealing to the International Court of Justice. So that's the process. And I believe some of the cases have some really good evidence. There's good research backing up the fact that it is the ANC that destroyed our water infrastructure. We're facing a serious water crisis in South Africa. And as you know, water is a basic human right.
Yes.
The government is obligated to provide water. If you don't have water, people die. And that's what's happening. Right now, there's people that's going without water. They're sending tankers around, and all these mafias is controlling the water supply and making millions out of it and stealing taxpayers' money. All of that is happening. All of that is a crime against humanity, and it has to be presented to the courts and then International Court of Justice. Because in all of these cases, the government has promised people that they will uphold the Constitution and the rights, the constitutional rights of people, children, women, and they're not doing that. They're failing in that. And so it has to be tried and tested through the court system to the international court. Why? Because the end result of this government's failure, they're not failing because they're trying their best and failing. They're deliberately failing because their interest is to enrich themselves while people are dying around them. And they watching and they seeing the people die. They're seeing more and more people lose their jobs as a result of their economic policies, and they're not doing anything about it. They're not changing it. Even though some of the top economists in the world and in this country is warning the government to change. The World Bank sent out a statement that South Africa has to change its BE policies and some of its other policies to trigger growth, economic growth in this country. There's have been no economic growth in South Africa for the past decade, 10 years, no growth. And so that's why more and more people are losing their jobs. And because of all the other policies, this fight that the South African government, arrogant South African government, is with the US government, they can't get a trade deal. And that's the largest, most influential nation in the world. And we at loggerheads with them. We can't talk to them. Our ambassador has been kicked out of the country. And we've proposed as a special. And the
Sorry, Errol,
envoy
we lost you there for a
can't get
second. I think there's something wrong
visa to
maybe with
travel
your
into the country.
microphone.
So it's crazy what is happening. And I think that what this government is doing is deliberate. It's dismantling this country. It's dismantling our state-owned enterprises to the detriment and misery of millions of people. And so we have to charge them. We have to take them to court and saying what they have done is destroy this country. They've done it deliberately. There's people that have warned them to stop doing what they're doing, but they continue to do it. And so we need to charge them and hold them accountable in courts of law.
So it's interesting to me if we look to the international courts, because I've done a lot of research about this, and it's very rare in the case of a crime against humanity, because we've had a lot of crimes against humanity being committed all over the world in the past. We also had a lot of alleged crimes against humanity, and so on and so forth. But it's very rare that the ICJ or the ICC actually does anything about it, or makes a judgment, a final judgment about it. Let's talk about our history of South Africa, for example. So during apartheid, the ANC appealed to many different nations in order to get apartheid classified as a crime against humanity. Then in 1970, there was a UN convention where it was voted on whether South Africa was committing a crime against humanity through apartheid. As we know, after the vote, the UN convention then actually tabled it in the minutes that it was voted, so that apartheid is a crime against humanity. But of course, we know that the entire Anglosphere, such as America and the US, and the UK, I mean England, and some other allies of South Africa, such as Portugal, voted against calling apartheid a crime against humanity. Then most of the Western world abstained from voting, except for, I think it was Ireland, was one of the Western countries that actually voted to declare apartheid a crime against humanity. And then, of course, the entire East Bloc, such as all the communist countries, and also all of the Muslim countries in the Arab world, all of them voted for it to be declared a crime against humanity. So you had a very clear Cold War era politics here. On the one hand, the East Bloc said yes, it is, and on the other hand, the West Bloc said no, it is not, or either abstained from voting. And what actually happened after that was that apartheid was never officially or universally ratified as a crime against humanity. And that is the reason why we never saw any people being prosecuted like we've seen after the Second World War, with some of the Nazis that were prosecuted and actually found guilty of committing a crime against humanity. Not a single one of the apartheid leaders went through that. But still, the international pressure started piling onto South Africa in order to have regime change in this country, and that is how we actually ended up with the ANC, because of this international pressure. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that not even with a very successful campaign such as we had with the ANC before 1994, were the courts the vehicle, the international courts the vehicle that moved the country away or forced the country in any direction. It eventually was the international pressure. And of course, the apartheid government had allies in the West. France under Charles de Gaulle was a great ally of apartheid South Africa. And the US was a great ally of apartheid South Africa under Ronald Reagan, the UK under Margaret Thatcher. And then we saw a shift in politics within these Western nations where America and the UK and so on started turning against apartheid South Africa. And then when the apartheid regime in South Africa lost too many of his allies that it couldn't go on, that was eventually when things started to change here. So, with that in mind, do you not think that the strategy followed by the solidarity movement, for example, which is to appeal to as many different parties in as many different nations with foreign nations within the world, in order to state your case that things need to change and the ANC are committing crimes against humanity, and then convincing them in order to get those countries on your side for maybe an eventual future human rights convention vote within the UN, or more pressure than we already see with the United States of America. Are you going to focus on that side as well, or are you just going to focus on the legal side of things in order to get this into the ICJ?
Willem, I think the situation in South Africa is serious enough to warrant a multifaceted approach. I think we have some of the best legal minds in the group, and we're going to use that to approach the courts and put our case to the courts about what the ANC and other politicians, not just the ANC, there's politicians from other political parties that's also implicated in corruption that has caused harm to the people of South Africa. But if there's opportunity to speak to governments, international governments, foreign governments, about what the ANC is doing, the impact on the people, the crime, the corruption, the money laundering, the theft, the looting, the destruction of state enterprises, even the National Prosecuting Authority that cannot do their jobs because the ANC is deliberately keeping them under-resourced and underfunded. And they cannot fight crime and prosecute the cases they're supposed to. And that is all just to protect ANC cadres. So these are serious matters that is destroying this country, dismantling this country, dismantling its democratic institutions, and for one reason only, and said that's to protect the ANC and its cadres. So if we can speak to people along with the court action, of course we'll do that, and work alongside other groups that is lobbying governments and groups, just like the ANC did during the apartheid years, to make their case about the apartheid government and what they were doing. So we have the right to do that too, because our country is falling apart as a result of ANC misgovernance, corruption, mismanagement, and all of that. So already the United States government, the Trump administration, they've got two laws that's going through both the House and the Senate that specifically targets the ANC for corruption, anti-Semitism, and all kinds of other things. So that is good, and we must encourage that and begin to talk to other governments about what is actually happening in this country. So we must apply and pile on the pressure against this government and use every means, lawful means and method that we have to move the ANC out. We've got to get rid of the ANC. Everybody knows that. They understand that. South Africa cannot survive with the ANC in governance. We have to get rid of the ANC. We must make sure the EFF never gets any power, or the MK party, because they are the stepchildren of the ANC. All the corrupt individuals that is implicated in all kinds of misdemeanors are in those parties. They're involved in corruption themselves. So we've got to move away from that. We've got to make people understand. We've got to do a lot of communication and educating of people so they understand what these people are doing and the implications on South African, ordinary South African people. So we have to use other means of getting the information to it, because we can't trust the media. The mainstream media lies all the time. They paid and bought for, and they pushing all kinds of agendas. So we have to use other means, and there are other means of getting to the people of South Africa and helping them understand. But to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, we must use every means available to us. The law courts, communication, lobbying governments, speaking to whoever we can. We've got to use all of those means to rescue South Africa from the clutches of this evil criminal empire called the ANC.
There's one more topic that I want to discuss in tonight's podcast before we get to the super chats. I see there was some interesting questions that some guys asked in the super chats that I think will be valuable for you to answer. But before we get to that, and I invite anyone who wants to ask another question, they can ask them so long we'll get to them. But in any case, before we get to that, I want to talk about the timeline of yeah, RSACRA. What is the first steps that you're going to take and when? And how many of these different smaller or broken up court cases are we going to see within the next year? And when will we see the first one? Because I think myself and many of the people on this channel will probably want to follow these cases as they progress. And of course, on my channel, I'll report on them as they do progress. But we need to see a clear time frame. When are we going to see the first one? And how many are we going to look at next year? And yes, basically give us the timeline of when things are going to start with the legal action.
Okay, Willem, so I can invite your viewers to go to the Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance website, which is rsacra.co.za. And on there, they would see there's 4 kind of pillars: children's rights, socioeconomic rights, race-based laws, and the water crisis. There's a lot of research and there's a lot that has happened already as far as those issues are concerned. So the lawyers have a lot of information and research and data that they're working on. And so like the children's rights case could be filed at the High Court in February, March next year, 2026. So that's the beginning of that case. There's a lot of information also on the water crisis issues that also can be lodged at the court in the first half of next year. So some of these cases are going to be filed at the courts in the course of next year. As there are teams of lawyers in the organization, and each team headed up a senior counsel is going to be doing the research and gathering the data, and then when they're ready, they're going to file at High Court. And so we're going to begin to see this process taking shape next year, in the first half of next year, and it will be reported in the media, I'm sure. Because this is an organization dedicated to holding corrupt politicians accountable for their crimes against the people of South Africa. And so it's going to make the news, and we're going to start working that through. So these cases that are mentioned on the website, these are not the only cases. These are the ones we're starting with. So there are lawyers and attorneys and advocates joining. They indicating interest in the organization and what it's doing. And so the more lawyers and advocates and law professionals that join the organization, the more we'd be able to do, because it takes a lot of work to put a case together, to take it to the court. And so there's other issues that need to be addressed, and once we have more people on the group, we're going to see more activity and more cases being taken to court. And so we're gonna trust the process. We're going to go through the court process, and eventually we believe we will end up at the international courts. There's plenty of evidence. If you look at Willem, you must look at some of the evidence and the data that the media, the news media, investigative journalists have gathered. There is tons of stuff. It's incredible. If you read through this Amubugani, I think it's called, the investigative journalists, and what they found about certain people, even the fact that Julius Malema and Floyd Shavambu was involved in that VBS looting 2 billion from that bank. And it was, poor black people that invested in that bank and deposited their funding in that bank, and all that was stolen. And so the top guy has been convicted, he's been sentenced to prison, but he's He's written an affidavit and he implicated Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu that they got millions out of this. And they were promised millions out of this looted bank. And so where's the prosecution of that? And the media could even tell you in what account Malema received this money, how he put it in his credit card, what he used the credit card, what he bought and where he bought it. They have all that information, and yet there's no prosecution. And so I believe there's overwhelming evidence of serious crimes in South Africa by the ANC and their associates that is not getting to the court because the ANC has kept the National Prosecuting Authority underfunded and under-resourced, and they're controlling that part of it. Because if they let loose and they have all the resources they need, most of the ANC is going to be sitting in jail, and they know that. So they have to hobble that institution. But what happens if there's private prosecution, like Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance, and you have talented lawyers and legal professionals all working for the people of South Africa, pro bono, taking these cases to court and trying and testing it at court because the National Prosecuting Authority is not doing it. We might be surprised at the outcome of that.
Thank you very much, Errol. And I hope to see much more of this in the news. And if it's not in the news, then we'll make it the news. Then we'll report on it regardless on this channel. I see there was quite a few super chats, but most people, just said things like "Ons vir jou" and "God bless all South Africans." But there was one interesting question here by Mark Meiberg, who said the ANC will not exist by the time you get your justice. Is the fight worth it? And then he continued by saying, or is the fight always worth fighting?
Always. There's an incredible quote by a British statesman called Edmund Burke, and he said, all that is necessary for evil to prosper is that good people do nothing. And that is, of course, exactly right. If good people that love this country, patriotic South Africans, whether you're black, white, colored, or Indian, it's irrelevant, you're South African. The country goes down, everyone goes down with it. If we do something, if we fight, and not kind of, throw up your hands and say, what's the use? It's not going to, you kind of lose the fight before you even started. That's a bad attitude to have. You got to get out there and try and do something. And at least, even if you fail, at least you try. But sitting around and doing nothing is not an option for South Africa any longer. We're not in the position and for a nation to not do anything. So anybody with any kind of talent, you got a voice, speak up, say something, help, contribute to Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance, give even 100 Rand, contribute. It's going to cost a lot of money to take all these cases to court. And so we're fundraising so people can help and support in that way. Even pray for the organization, pray for the people involved here so that we can save this nation. South Africa is a beautiful country, you know that. It has massive potential. It should be one of the wealthiest nations on earth, right? People from all over the world love to come to South Africa. The tourists coming here. We've got everything going for us, except that we're run by a criminal network. Organized crime has control of this country. The ANC only want 40%. They're a minority party. They're not a majority party, but they're ruling like they're majority. Why are they allowed to do that? Why is the DA and the other parties just allowing the ANC to do exactly as they please? That's another question that needs to be answered, right? And so the people have spoken in the election last year. The ANC came down from 57% to 40%. They're saying we're not happy with the way you're governing. The ANC believes they're doing a great job, that the people are behind them. They're not. They're losing support, political support, because they're a criminal organization. They're thieving and stealing and looting this country, raping South Africa of all its resources so that a few people, even Ramaphosa's nephew, stole 2 billion from a hospital. A woman was murdered as a result of that. The ANC is responsible for all of that. You want to tell me that isn't crimes against humanity? They're killing people. They're killing people. They're not saying who are the people behind it. Just now, recently, a witness in that Matlanga commission was gunned down. You know about that. And who's behind that? Who ordered that hit? You know what's
We
going to
never
happen?
see we never see who orders these heats, and not a single one of those 20 that I actually discussed on the other stream the other day. Sometimes they catch the actual murderer, sometimes they don't, but somehow they always fail to find the person behind it. One last question here, Errol. It says, who funds you? Credibility is paramount.
Well, so nobody's funding Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance at the moment. We've got no money. And so we're starting to talk to business people and that to fund, telling that we want to take these cases to court on behalf of the people of South Africa. And so we're asking people to make donations. So we have no funders at the moment. And we're hoping that our funders would be the South African people who we represent. You know,
Yes.
people give little bits of money, lots of little can make up large amounts that we can use to take these cases to court, and we can be answerable. And of course, integrity and all of those things are going to be critical for us because we're taking the ANC to court for corruption and theft and fraud. So we'll make sure that all the income and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. That will happen. So
And it will
the
be
answer to that,
it will be transparent. It will be yeah. You will give all of that information out when it happens.
absolutely. You see the kind of people in the group, some of the top legal minds and professionals. I mean, this thing is going to be done. You know, it's the kind of people that hate corruption and thievery and all the things that's happening and destroying our country. We are the people that is going to be stand up against that. So we're going to make sure that everything is done above board. But at the moment, we've got about 3,000 rand in our bank account, and we're going to be fundraising. So when these cases are taken to court next year, we're going to need the funding. We believe we will get it because these are strong cases. There's overwhelming evidence, Willem. It's incredible. In the meetings we have, the lawyers talk about the data that they've gathered on this stuff. It's incredible. What is common knowledge in this country? And you know, if you look at it, you say, but why aren't these people in jail? Well, because nobody's doing anything about it. And so we're saying it's time for somebody to do something about it and send these criminals to jail where they belong and free this nation from corruption and the destruction that we're currently under. South Africa is far too a beautiful country with beautiful people with huge potential to allow a small handful of people to destroy it the way the ANC is doing. So we're fighting against that, and we need the people's support.
Thank you very much, Errol, for this discussion. I just put up your website. Hopefully, it's the right one. No, I'm just
Yes,
joking.
indeed.
I know it's the right one. Any case, so guys, the website is rsacra.co.za. That is rsacra.co.za. It's the same as the the acronym for the name itself, and you'll find all the relevant information there. You can click donate, you can click get in touch to get in touch with the team there, and so you can also support this movement. And if you want to know how, then just go to the website. Also, I would like anyone that was inspired by this talk to read up more on what they are doing. Obviously, we can't cover in everything in 1 hour in one single podcast, so you can read all of that on the website that I showed there. And also everyone that is inspired in general by the work that we are doing on this specific channel and the media team and our research, you can also become a member of the Willem Petzer group and support us by just sending sign me up to our WhatsApp number. That is the number on the screen. And obviously, we cannot go on with the work that we are doing here without your support. So we're very thankful for everyone that also signed up as members on our side. And obviously, I have to give thanks to my wife that put up those lovely Christmas decorations. And as I have done in every single video since we have put them up, I just want to remind you guys what is the reason for the season right now. And even though we are discussing very negative things on this channel because of the nature of the discussions and the topics that we discuss here, we can always believe that our Lord is king on this earth. Christ is king, and we know that everything will work out according to his will, and he's stronger than any ANC or any any enemy can ever be. Thank you very much, Errol. It was a lovely discussion, and I hope to see a lot more of you guys in the future.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity of being on your platform, Willem, and thank you for doing the great work you're doing. And I also want to echo what you say. Jesus Christ is Lord. He's the righteous one. No evil will escape his gaze. And we trust in the Lord, and we do what we do, and we know that as we advance our righteous cause, that God will give us the victory because we trust in him, we believe in him, and all evil will be subjected to the light of Jesus Christ.
Thank you very much, Errol, and thank you for everyone who had watched. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, goodbye, and God bless every single one of you.
Thank you.